The first time I saw the raw data, it didn't arrive with fanfare or headlines. It came quietly, as most cosmic revelations do, through a late-night alert in my inbox, a blinking notification on a screen cluttered with calibration graphs and half-finished manuscripts. Atlas in Chile had flagged something classified as C/2025N1, but the orbital solution attached to the file froze me in place. A near-perfect, hyperbolic trajectory. Exactly what we had seen in 2017 with Oumuamua and again in 2019 with Borisov, a third interstellar visitor. I stared at the numbers as if they might rearrange themselves into something more ordinary. They didn't. The sun sets the stage for all motion in the solar system. Anything bound to it moves in ellipses, stretched or circular. But this newcomer wasn't bound, it wasn't staying. It was cutting through our planetary neighborhood the way an impatient traveler marches through an unfamiliar airport, direct path, no lingering. And yet, at the time of discovery, there was almost no public attention. The world was choked with politics, budget cuts, government shutdowns that stalled NASA's communications, and a media ecosystem trained to weaponize uncertainty. In that sense, 3 I/ATLAS arrived at exactly the wrong time, or perhaps the perfect one. Within hours of the preliminary detection, I initiated the same protocol I followed with Oumuamua years earlier. Verify the orbit, demand more data, and prepare for the inevitable storm of speculation. Except this time, the speculation came faster than the confirmation. Before any official agency issued a statement, fringe forums were already circulating grainy, zoomed-in screenshots of the ATLAS dashboard, claiming the object had an unnatural acceleration curve. Someone annotated the trajectory with a bright red arrow and added the caption, "Alien probe? NASA says nothing during shutdown." I exhaled slowly. It hadn't been 24 hours, and already we were drowning in noise. Official channels lagged behind. The shutdown left many government scientists unable to make public statements, and the absence of immediate clarity became its own kind of gravity, pulling wild narratives into orbit. By day 2, tabloids ran headlines like, "Is this the one? Interstellar object baffles scientists," and photos of me from past lectures began resurfacing in articles speculating whether maverick Harvard physicist Avi Loeb is finally vindicated. Vindication wasn't on my mind, data was. Atlas provided only the first glimpse. The real story wouldn't begin until 3I/Atlas swung behind the sun, where our view from Earth would be cut off. That transition triggered something primal in people. When humanity loses sight of an unknown object, especially one entering from deep space, our imaginations don't dim, they ignite. During the first 2 weeks, I was contacted by journalists, podcasters, and anonymous callers who somehow obtained my office number. "Professor Loeb, does it match the signature of an engineered object? Is NASA hiding the albedo data? Does the blue glow indicate propulsion?" The last question made me pause, not because it was right, but because it foreshadowed what was coming. The blogs and tabloids focused obsessively on the phrase blue glow, even though the phenomenon hadn't yet been confirmed. A sketchy diagram from an amateur astronomer circulated online, depicting a comet-like body with an electric sapphire halo. The image was fabricated, but it spread faster than any correction. People didn't want clarity. They wanted a mystery that mirrored their fears and hopes. Then the object vanished. From our vantage point, 3I/ATLAS slipped behind the sun for several weeks, becoming invisible to Earth-based telescopes. A perfectly normal celestial event, but the timing was disastrous. The shutdown was in full effect. NASA's ability to communicate updates was severely limited, and silence, public official silence, became a breeding ground. Suddenly, every headline screamed secrecy. Missing interstellar object, NASA refuses to release data. Blue flash seen from Mars orbiter, cover up? If this isn't a spaceship, why won't they show us the images? I remember sitting in my Cambridge office, scrolling through the chaos, wondering how scientific discourse had once again been replaced by modern myth-making. Humans have always done this. When light disappears behind clouds, we imagine thunder gods. When a comet streaks across the sky, we invent omens. When something comes from beyond our solar system, we ask if it carries intelligence. The truth is, intelligence doesn't require drama. It requires patience. And science, as unglamorous as it often seems, demands waiting. Luckily, not all eyes were blind. While Earth lost sight of the object, Mars did not. Orbiters like MAVEN and the camera arrays attached to NASA's Psyche mission captured spectroscopic readings and low-resolution imagery. Those instruments weren't designed for comet surveillance, but they were enough to reveal something extraordinary. 3I/ATLAS was brightening, rapidly, far faster than a typical comet approaching perihelion. Even I felt a spark of unease when the preliminary spectral analysis came through. The emission suggested dense gas release rather than dust scattering. That, combined with the reported blue shift in visible wavelengths, indicated a surface undergoing violent transformation. The crust, ancient, irradiated by billions of years in the interstellar void, was cracking open under the sun's heat. This was not a peaceful tourist drifting through the solar system. This was an object shedding its outer identity in real time. I recorded a personal note into my lab's audio log. The acceleration is natural. The brightening is natural. The blue emission could be ionized gas, likely CO2 or CO frozen deep beneath an irradiated crust. Nothing artificial. I said it calmly, but the truth was more complicated. Not artificial didn't mean uninteresting. It meant we were witnessing a phenomenon no one had ever documented this clearly before. Nature can be stranger than any engineered artifact. As the object neared perihelion, its closest approach to the sun, its brightness doubled again. The crust, heated unevenly, began releasing gas jets that pushed outward in unpredictable directions. To a layperson, those jets might resemble propulsion. To a scientist, they were simply physics, sunlight turning ice into gas, pressure creating thrust. But the public wasn't watching physics. They were watching an unfolding thriller. I remember a reporter calling me late one night, breathless, claiming a whistleblower from inside NASA had leaked that the object changed direction, as if responding to sunlight with intent. I corrected her. All comets respond to sunlight. It's called outgassing. She wasn't satisfied. She needed a villain or a miracle, not thermodynamics. The world waited, speculated, argued. Then, on October 31st, appropriately Halloween 3I/ATLAS, completed its hidden arc behind the sun and began emerging once again into Earth's line of sight. That morning, Dr. Chi-Cheng Zhang, operating the Lowell Observatory Discovery Telescope, became the first human on our planet to see it again. A small smudge at first, faint, but undeniably brighter than before. He emailed me a single sentence. It's back and it's blue. I leaned back in my chair, eyes closed, letting the reality settle. We were entering a new chapter, not only of scientific discovery, but of public imagination. Every time a strange visitor passes through our cosmic backyard, humanity reveals something about itself, its fears, its skepticism, its hunger for answers, and now the world would watch 3I/ATLAS climb out of the sun's glare, brighter, stranger, and more misunderstood than ever. When the first enhanced images arrived from Lowell Observatory, the world had already fractured into competing realities. Some saw confirmation of a natural interstellar comet behaving unusually but predictably. Others saw what they had been primed to expect for months: an intruder, a messenger, a probe. The blue hue became the spark that lit every conspiracy engine online. People slowed down the telescope footage, boosted saturation, circled artifacts in red marker as if decoding some cosmic ransom note. It didn't matter that the images were noisy or that scattering effects near dawn often distorted color. What mattered was the hunger for a story that felt bigger than science. As the image brightness increased, observatories from Europe, Japan, and South America coordinated their tracking schedules. The object rose earlier each morning, climbing higher over the eastern horizon. By then, the media frenzy had escalated. News tickers ran hourly updates. Social feeds were split between fear and fascination, a global tug-of-war between rationality and imagination. My inbox filled with lecture invitations, debate requests, and questions phrased like accusations. Professor Loeb, if it's natural, why does it brighten faster than expected? Why does the tail bend differently from solar system comets? Why is NASA avoiding live commentary? NASA wasn't avoiding anything. They were operating with a skeleton staff because of the shutdown. But in a media ecosystem addicted to suspicion, absence becomes guilt. The first definitive color-corrected observations came from Dr. Zhang's dual-scope setup, both the Discovery telescope and his own commercial instrument. The results were consistent. The object had indeed taken on a notable blue tint. Not neon, not luminous, not unnatural, just blue. Scientifically, this indicated ionized gas, likely CO2 or CO, sublimating at high rates. The crust of interstellar comets, after billions of years of gamma radiation exposure, becomes chemically altered. When heated, it doesn't behave like the fluffy, dust-rich comets from our own solar system. Instead, it cracks like a pressurized cocoon, releasing trapped volatile compounds in sudden bursts. To me, this was exhilarating. We were witnessing the surface of a relic older than our sun, undergoing a kind of awakening. But to the public, the blue meant something else entirely. One broadcast host held up the enhanced image and asked, "Does this look like a comet to you, or does it look like something powering up?" Another anchor speculated that the steep brightening curve could indicate an internal energy source. Online communities claimed the blue glow matched the hue of ion propulsion engines used in probes like NASA's Dawn. The logic was flawed, but it resonated with millions. I studied the new orbital refinement charts. As expected, the trajectory was bending subtly around the sun's gravitational well. Nothing dramatic, nothing engineered, just a gentle course deflection, the kind one would expect from a fast-moving, loosely bound interstellar comet. Professor Mark Burchell, whom I'd known for years, gave an interview trying to clarify the physics. "A swing around the sun is normal," he said. "Not a slingshot, just a slow change of course." But the clip was buried beneath sensational headlines about alien maneuvering. Around this time, I decided to record a public statement. I positioned my camera, adjusted the microphone, and spoke plainly. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. There is no sign of artificial behavior. The brightening is consistent with natural processes. The blue color is gas, not technology. Within hours, my statement was clipped, spliced, recaptioned, and repurposed across platforms. One channel titled their edit, "Loeb admits unknown energy source." Another claimed I was backpedaling after previously arguing Oumuamua might have been technological. People don't listen for truth, they listen for ammo. Meanwhile, the object continued its journey. Each morning it rose earlier, revealing more detail. By late November, larger facilities such as Subaru, Keck, and the VLT were able to begin preliminary imaging runs. The shape remained unresolved, a diffuse smudge, growing sharper but never solid. To trained eyes, this was normal. To untrained ones, it was infuriating. "Why can't they give us a clear picture?" callers demanded. "My phone can zoom the moon. Why can't NASA zoom this?" I found myself explaining again and again that comets are not solid bodies like planets. They are clouds, evolving, shedding material, interacting with solar radiation. The nucleus hides inside layers of vapor and dust, but explanations rarely outrun suspicion. As more observatories joined in, another pattern emerged. 3I/ATLAS wasn't just brightening. Its gas output was escalating in pulses. Each pulse sent ripples through the comet's surrounding coma. If mapped visually, the effect resembled concentric rings expanding outward. Stunning, but again entirely natural. The thermal shock of perihelion was cracking open deeper layers of its irradiated crust. Ancient volatile pockets were escaping in jets illuminated by sunlight. What looked like purposeful activity was simply chemistry. Despite this, the conspiratorial narrative grew louder. Talk shows invited former government contractors to speculate about stealth probes. Influencers live-streamed countdowns to potential contact. Some claimed the object contained messages encoded in its brightness fluctuations. A popular video insisted the color change was a calling card used by advanced civilizations. No amount of data could counter the collective desire for spectacle. I wasn't angry. I understood. Humanity has always woven myth through the unknown. Interstellar objects are rare, only 3 in recorded history, and rarity invites longing. Some people want to feel watched, others want to feel threatened. Both impulses create meaning. Still, the scientific mission pressed forward. For the first time since Oumuamua, we were on the verge of observing an interstellar object with coordinated global instrumentation. We had the chance to study its chemistry, its structure, its interaction with solar radiation. We could read the history written in its layers, the radiation scars, the frozen gases, the mineral signatures left by the star system it originated from. This was a message, yes, but not one crafted by intelligence. It was the universe speaking in natural laws. As 3I/ATLAS continued to rise higher in Earth's morning sky, I knew the next phase would be decisive. Higher altitude meant better clarity. Better clarity meant more data. More data meant either the calming of public chaos or its intensification, depending on what the telescopes revealed. And then came the Mars data dump. For weeks, images from MAVEN and orbiters had been accumulating silently within NASA's internal servers, queued for processing. When the shutdown finally eased, the backlog began flowing. Spectral maps, brightness curves, time-lapse composites. And in one of the early releases, a frame caught my breath. A blue jet, thin, elegant, arcing away from the comet like a luminous blade, captured as it erupted from beneath the crust. Not technology, not propulsion, not alien intent, but beautiful enough that many would never believe otherwise. The release of the Mars imagery marked a turning point. The world didn't quiet down. If anything, the opposite happened, but the conversation shifted. The blue jet captured in that fleeting frame became the most downloaded scientific image of the year. For some, it was confirmation of natural cometary physics at work. For others, it was the sign they had been waiting for, the signal of a mechanism. Every explanation I offered seemed to split the public further. When I told audiences that volatile ices under thermal stress can erupt into luminous plumes, someone inevitably countered, "But why blue?" When I explained that ionized gas often glows blue under solar radiation, they asked why this comet was brighter than expected. The burden of proof kept moving, receding like the horizon. By early December, 3I/ATLAS had risen high enough in Earth's pre-dawn sky that major ground observatories could begin full-resolution spectroscopic sweeps. The atmosphere buzzed with the electricity of discovery. In conference rooms and virtual meetings, scientists traded early findings, unusually strong CO2 signatures, a surprisingly thick irradiated crust, volatile pockets bursting in organized cycles. These weren't anomalies, they were insights into interstellar chemistry. Nature was showing us a piece of the galaxy that would never return. Yet online, the parallel narrative raced ahead. One commentator declared the comet's pulsing jets were encoded signals. A viral theory insisted the object was slowing down intentionally, preparing for a rendezvous. Some viewers claimed they could hear faint audio in the telescope footage, electronic oscillations, whispers, patterns. None of it existed, but belief doesn't require evidence, it requires desire. I found myself repeating a mantra during interviews. Uncertainty is not evidence of the extraordinary. It is simply a call for more data. Still, people looked at me as if I were gatekeeping a cosmic secret. Perhaps in their eyes, admitting ignorance felt like complicity. But the truth is, ignorance is where science begins. As the object continued outbound, its tail changed shape once more. Gas streamed ahead of it, pushed by the solar wind, forming a narrow blue spear that pointed away from the sun. Dust trailed behind in a faint golden sheet, delicate as smoke. Two tails, opposite directions, painting a geometry both familiar and alien. It was beautiful beyond metaphor, a dual signature of physics playing out across millions of miles. For a brief moment, global attention shifted from suspicion to awe. People woke early to watch live feeds from observatories. Children sketched the comet in school notebooks. Social media filled with photos of dawn skies, hopeful captions, and messages about our shared cosmic perspective. Even those who clung to the idea of artificial origin expressed a kind of reverence. Mystery, after all, is a universal language. Then came the decisive data from spectroscopy. The chemical composition of the gas matched known patterns of irradiated interstellar ices. CO2 levels were high, yes, but consistent with a crust bombarded by gamma rays for billions of years. The color, the brightening, the jets, each piece fit the model. What had looked intentional was simply unusual, and what was unusual was simply unfamiliar. The object accelerated as expected along its outbound hyperbolic course. No deviations, no maneuvers, no signals, just the quiet physics of a visitor leaving our solar system forever. NASA's official statement, delayed for months by bureaucracy and shutdowns, finally landed. They presented the findings with clarity. 3I/ATLAS exhibits all behaviors characteristic of a natural interstellar comet. They showed time-lapse sequences, spectrographs, brightness analyses, gas flow simulations. They answered questions patiently, calmly. And yet, as the briefing concluded, I knew the reactions before reading them. Some people accepted the explanation, others rejected it outright. A portion insisted NASA was lying. Another portion insisted the truth was still hidden. The splintered realities remained splintered. No amount of data could repair a landscape shaped by distrust. But something unexpected happened in the midst of the chaos. People kept watching. Long after the sensational headlines faded, long after the comet drifted past Mars's orbit on its outward trajectory, millions continued following the observatory updates. They sent questions, not accusatory but curious. They asked about gamma radiation, about how ices form in deep space, about why hyperbolic trajectories occur, about how many interstellar objects might have passed undetected before we had the tools to see them. Curiosity grew in the cracks left by confusion. That, to me, was the quiet victory. On the morning the last clear images were taken, I stood on the rooftop of the observatory in Arizona, the sky still dark, the horizon just beginning to pale. The cold air stung my face as I glanced toward the region where 3I/ATLAS rose hours earlier. It was already too faint for the naked eye, its brilliance diminishing as it fled the sun's influence. A smudge, then a whisper, then nothing. I thought about how the object had arrived during a moment of political instability, how its disappearance behind the sun had become fuel for speculation, how its blue glow had ignited imaginations around the world. I thought about how its natural beauty had been mistaken for intention, how its physics had been interpreted as messages, and I thought about how humanity had revealed itself in the process, fractured, hopeful, fearful, brilliant, irrational, and endlessly curious. The universe does not send us visitors with answers. It sends us reminders of how small we are, how connected we remain to the unknown, and how the quest for understanding often tells us more about ourselves than about the cosmos. As the first rays of sunlight lifted over the ridge, I whispered a quiet farewell, not to an alien probe, not to a cosmic messenger, but to a traveler from another star, passing briefly through our sky, stirring the human story in the way only the universe can. When it was gone, the questions remained, and that perhaps was the point.